Welcome to the Cosmetic Podcast.
This podcast amplifies the topics you want to hear about.
Cosmetic means being a person or thing that gives rise to a phenomenon that is dynamic or energizing.
Globally minded and locally focused.
I'm Keith Benson.
And I'm Rodrigo Ross.
So today we're going to talk about train up a child. This whole deal with how do we help kids develop an appreciation for diversity and being culturally competent.
I love it, right? Because the reality is the kids of today are going to be the adults of tomorrow. And so you have to intentionally help them see the world from a much more global perspective. And hopefully some of the challenges and the issues that we're dealing with today, maybe they'll be lessened in the future if we were intentional about helping kids.
So let me ask you this. I had an individual to say to me that they don't teach their kids about race. What?
I disagree with that. And I've had people say that to me too, that they teach their children not to see differences. And I think that's counterproductive because the reality is different races exist, people are different, and we should work at changing the narrative, right? The negative connotation that comes with recognizing that someone is of a different race or someone is different, and instead help children celebrate, right? Because that's the thing that makes them feel kind of superpower, right? Superhero-ish, is that when they're different and they're unique and they're talented, like it almost sends mixed messages to children in one vein that you're talking to them about, oh, you're so unique and you're the only one that's you and that's wonderful. But then you refuse to help them recognize that and celebrate it in that same way with other people.
Because at the earliest age of a child's life, they're learning about what differences are.
Absolutely.
You know, and that encompasses a whole lot of things. And so why not teach about these cultural differences in the world? And it's really, I mean, you increase their learning.
Exactly. I mean, and it's fine. It's okay. People are different. You eat different things. You have different lives experiences. You're culturally different. Like there's something to be learned from them. And then there are things that other folks can learn from your child as well. Like I don't agree with this whole ideology of like, oh no, we don't see difference, or, you know, we don't talk about race. It's like you absolutely have to. It's a thing.
And so some of the research shows that as young as ages 2.5 to 3 years old, you know, they become aware and begin to take in socially prevailing ideas and feelings and stereotypes about the people around them.
Yeah. And so here's another statistic. 75% of white parents never or almost never talk about race with their children, while non-white parents are 3 times more likely to have that discussion around race with their children, because that is their reality. You cannot ignore it, and you cannot, not prepare your child for what they're going to experience around that. And so as a parent, there are a couple of things that you can do to kind of help mitigate your child's learning and help them be culturally competent. One of them is that when they notice things and ask questions, have the conversation, right? Since you know your kids are going to notice, it's a cognitive thing. Like little kids, why? They're always looking around, they're always noticing, they understand that, at a very early age that things are different. Don't shy away from the conversation. Now, it will push you as a parent to educate yourself, right? Because a kid sometimes will stump you. And as a parent myself, that's the last thing I want to be like, dang, they got me on that one right there. Because I don't even know.
Yeah. So we have
learn.
Yeah, we have to put ourselves in a place that we know how to talk about the subject. I know for me and raising our kids, man, at early ages, we talked about it all, because I didn't want them, I'd rather for it to come from me first versus in the streets.
Right, yeah.
And so
accurate information. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So notice that the kids are going to ask questions, educate yourself, have the conversation, right? And use words. Don't baby the words up, right? With kids. Now, don't be disrespectful, right? Like, we're definitely not advocating that you use some of your more derogatory statements, but talk to your kids about the difference between equality and equity. Don't baby it down like, help to train their ears and their understanding around words that talk about social justice. This is what culture means. Like really help them. Kids are sponges, right? And at that age, they're absorbing all of this and they're increasing their vocabulary. And so why not use that time to really kind of embed these things?
Because a lot of times we tend to think that children, even at age 2 and 3 and 4 years old, that they can't handle certain things. Now, our examples may be a little bit different than, if they are 10 or 15 to 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
But at that early age, they really do have this intellectual capacity to be able to understand, different things.
Absolutely. I'm not going, now that I think about it, I'm not going to even tell this untruth. Some of my best conversations have been with little kids because they're going to tell you the truth. They're going to give you perspectives that you just hadn't even thought about. And at some point, they're just not really limited by, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I shouldn't think of it this way. Like, their mind is just so free. They're just going to think the way that they're going to think. Like, you a good conversation with a 4-year-old.
It's amazing. It's amazing how much they know.
Yeah.
But when you don't educate your child, it really puts you in some awkward predicaments. Let me share with one with you.
Oh gosh.
So one Thanksgiving,
I'm laughing already.
One Thanksgiving, I went home with my friend, with his friends, Caucasian person, and we had dinner. Now, mind you, there's differences in Thanksgivings.
Right.
And so I was in the kitchen, I was just helping cleaning up, and so her little niece had the dish rag, and she began to wipe my hand.
She's using the dish rag wiping your hand?
And she says to her grandmother, it won't come off.
Oh no.
And it's like, so grandmother and my friend embarrassed, but man, somebody should have had a conversation with her right then, as well as before, to just know what differences is, right?
Right. Because the reality is, how many black people has this baby really been around, right? Like this might have been her first real experience, and in that moment, that was a great learning opportunity. Like you said, well, no, baby, it doesn't wash off. Like that's how he was made. That's his color. It's fine.
No need to run away from it. It's reality. That's my skin color.
But the reality is, because of the reaction of the parents, now that child is going to think differently about race, right? Like that innocence of it and that ability to just have the conversation and be on a fact-finding mission. That's how you unintentionally embed biases by your own adult reaction in a situation like that.
Right, and as parents, we got to be able to take the time to engage our children in a place where they can see what differences look like. Yeah. And some of that may be going to the museum, like that's one end, but also a proximity of individuals. Like, how do you put yourself in situations whereby you will see differences in different cultures there? And that could be going to the different festival. That's one end. But it also is that I'm going to be intentional about who I befriend. Yeah.
Exposure matters, right? Simply exposing your children to these diverse environments and these culturally rich places make kids more socially aware. It makes them more keen and it makes them more inquisitive. And then they'll be more apt, especially as they get older, to go out and research and really understand and find out differences about culture and race and just differences as a whole. For me growing up, my environment was fairly homogeneous, right? So it was very much people who looked like me, very much people in low socioeconomic standing. But one thing I will give to growing up in New York, you could get on a train and in 2 or 3 stops be completely immersed in a different world. Like I could get on a train and go to Chinatown, and for me, it felt like I was really in China, right? Like I was completely immersed in that culture, from the language to the smells to the taste. And then you could get on a train and go another couple of stops and you're in Little Italy and you're completely immersed in that culture, right? And so allowing kids to just really be immersed gives them an appreciation. Like, I love all of these different experiences and all kinds of foods and all of the different traditions and nuances about all of these different cultures that make them unique. But if you really took the time to listen, you'll be like, that's pretty doggone cool.
Right, and so one of the opportunities we have in the YMCA is that we have the ability to create programming in such a way that kids get different experiences.
Yeah.
And so I recall back in my day as a program director, I would take young people from inner city of Franklin, Tennessee. We would go to different places on our missions trips so that they can serve in a different capacity.
Yeah.
So while these individuals came from a low to moderate income, household, we took them to an environment that was even less than that. So here is homeless people, like, how do they live? And so your situation, woe is me over here,
Yeah.
but now let's go over here and see a different way that you can serve people that may have less means than even what you have.
Yeah, and you never really know how the impact of something like that is. So I will tell you, we were a part of, when I was a young program director, we were a part of a 4-H program, right? And this was basically for, at the time, what they called inner city or urban kids to really get an understanding of like farming and agriculture, right? And so we won this grant, and I was able to take 3 kids to this rural area of Mississippi. So I'm thinking the highlight of the trip is going to be the fact that these, urban inner city kids had never been to this part, and they never understood agriculture and how it feeds economy and all that kind of good stuff. But what happened was, this was the first time that any of those young people had ever been on an airplane. And one kid in particular was so enamored with this whole airplane experience that after that, do you not know that that young man went to college and majored in aeronautical engineering? He said, I never wanted to go to college. Nobody in my family went to college. That wasn't on my radar, but he just fell in love with planes.
Game changer.
And it was a game changer. I'm thinking, I'm going to show this baby a cow. He said, I don't care nothing about your cow. This plane is where it's at, right? So that unintended consequence, this young man's whole life trajectory was changed because somebody gave him an opportunity to get on a plane.
So we get the opportunity, again, programming in the Y. I'm thinking about after school. We have, with after schools throughout, not just here in Dallas, but throughout the country, we are able to train up young people in a great way. And it's like, how do we use those experiences there with our programming to emphasize cultural differences and all that with
Absolutely. And you can even do it like in our Child Watch programs, right? So many of our facilities have Child Watch where if a parent is in the facility, we'll watch the really young kids, toddlers and stuff. Imagine if we introduced books that we're reading in those spaces. Imagine if we introduced activities and toys that are culturally relevant in those spaces, and you really start to kind of open those children's minds up and, quite frankly, help the parents who sometimes it's not that you intentionally hold this stuff back, it's that I just didn't even think, right, to expose my child to it.
So, translation of if I could say this, is that what you said is that we shouldn't just go to Walmart and buy stuff for our Child Watch room just to have stuff in there.
Absolutely.
We should be intentional about the product.
How does it culturally fortify this kid? Yeah.
So the YMCA in Waco has an incredible project. Rodney Martin, the CEO down there, he adopts schools. All 16 of the elementary schools in Waco, they adopt them, and they provide books for the young people. So not just any books.
Okay.
These are books with the young people's names in there. So it would be Keith Benson, not just in one place, but it read that throughout the whole book. And so now these young people who come again from a less resourced area, they are seeing kids that look like them in the book, as well as seeing their name in the book. And you talking about, I had the opportunity to see that in person. You talking about the impact of it. What, the eyes just get so big, and the kids are in awe.
I would be, if somebody gave me a book right now with my name in it, I would be like over the moon.
Yeah.
I can imagine what that does.
And so these kids are able to build a library, and it's not just a one-time thing. And so as they stay in the school district, they do it from first grade all the way up to, I believe it's 5th grade. And And
So they get 5 different books.
5 different books
I love
year after year
I
with
love
their
it.
with their name in there.
I love it. There are absolutely things that communities can do and that individuals can do. But here are some of the key factors when you want to make sure that you help build that diversity strength, so to speak, in kids. You know, you got to make sure and hold accountable and work with school districts or YMCAs or wherever your child goes to make sure that they celebrate diversity, right? You got to celebrate the similarities and celebrate the differences that baby is going to encounter in the world. You're going to have to help children verbally share the things that make them special, but also recognize the things that make others special. Teach children it is okay to ask questions, right? Ask a question and prepare yourself to have the conversation and then expose them to diverse cultures. I love it.
Yeah, you know, I want to give Jody Newman a shout out, one of our
Yes,
listeners,
Jody.
for bringing this topic to mind. And so I want to thank everybody out there for listening to Cosmetic.
Where our conversations are local.
Globally minded and locally focused.
Give us some feedback on some other ways that we can help to make sure kids are diverse and culturally competent at ymcadallas.org/cosmetic.
And as always,
Stay dynamic.
stay energized.
Stay cosmetic.